Today is a prayer, it's a prayer for physicians, and it's adapted from Maimonides, who was the great Jew. Hands, clear vision to my mind, put kindness and sympathy in my heart. Give me strength to ease the suffering of my fellow man. Help me to do good work and realize that my daily work is a special privilege and an honor. God bless our club, my fellow Rotarians, our speaker. God bless our food and the cooks who cook it.
Thank you, Charlie. Dr. Mohammed Barbar will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and our four-way test. Dr. Barbar is President of the Kentucky and Geriatric and Palliative Services and a Paul Harris Fellow.
Let's say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now before we test, is it true? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and our friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
Thank you. You may be seated. We'd like to take this opportunity to welcome guests to our meeting. Rotarians, if you would approach the microphone, introduce yourself first, and then acknowledge your guest.
I'm Julie Schmidt with KET, and I'm delighted to have Laura Kruger as my guest, who also works with KET and works very closely in producing with Dr. Tuckson our weekly program, Kentucky Health. Thank you.
This is Barry King Grossman. I'm proud to introduce my guest, Dr. Rob Zarin. Dr. Zarin is president of Louisville Pathology Associates at Baptist Hospital. He's currently serving as the board chair of GLMS. What he's most known for in town, he's the best dressed doctor in town.
President Barry, Raymond Wood Mancy. I am co-introducing guests of our speaker today. My successor at the Medical Society, Bert Glenn, who is Executive Vice President and CEO, and Amanda Edmondson, who is Director of Marketing and Communications at the Medical Society.
I'm Charlie Oberst. Classification was physician/obstetrics. My guest today is Dr. Sam Gerard, thoracic and cardiovascular surgeon. Welcome, Sam.
Is there a doctor in the house? If you are a guest who wants to learn more about joining our Rotary Club, please see Craig Sherman at the back of the room after the meeting for a brief introduction and to learn more about joining our Fellowship of Leaders. We welcome candidates for membership who hold a senior position and young professionals who are emerging leaders. Come join us, it's lots of fun. Craig is entertaining, if nothing else. There he is today. Our announcer for today's meeting is Tracy Texas Shugart. Tracy is the Executive Director for the Louisville Metro Police Foundation.
Thank you, Barry. Birthdays for the week. Joey Bailey, February 7th. Steve Byrne, February 9th. Rick King, February 10th. John Gregory and Michael Tay, both February 13th. Any of our birthday... None of our birthday people are here? All right, well, happy birthday in spirit. The 2018-2019 Rotary Club directories are now available at the registration desk. See Kenzie to pick yours up. Our Rotary Mentor Program is recruiting volunteers for Friday, February 8th at 8:30 a.m. at JCTC. The topic is resume writing. Contact Walt Kunow to volunteer or if you want more information. We are less than 2 weeks away from the Business Synergy and Prospective Member Reception. Rotarians and prospective members will get the opportunity to tour and taste at Kentucky Peerless Distilling Company on Tuesday, February 19th. There will be a prospective new member reception at 5 to 5:30, and then business networking and tours and tasting at 5:30 to 8. There are 3 ways to register for the event. There is a sign-up sheet with Kenzie at the registration desk. Log into DACDB or call or email the Rotary Club office. Save the date. Our annual Rotary Day at the Downs will be on Wednesday, May 1st in the State's Parlor Room from 11 to 5. Tickets are on a first-come, first-served basis. Registration is now open through DACDB or by calling or emailing the Rotary office. Next week's meeting will be here at the Fraser and will feature our very own Dick Bryan, Director of the International Center for Corporate Learning at Sullivan University. He will be speaking about enhancing relationships in honor of Valentine's Day. Some of you may need to make sure that you're here for that. And now back to you, Barry.
Would Leland Woodmansey join me, please? And could I ask our 3 new members to join me on stage? Sam Salone, Tony Hammond, and John Morse. Sam Salone is president of Fast Signs, born and raised in Louisville, attended Fern Creek High School, married his high school sweetheart. It's a Valentine's Day, come on. One son, Troy, who's 25 years old. Started Fast Signs in '94 with his wife, Susan. They now operate 2 Louisville offices. Serves on the board of directors for the Better Business Bureau, the Musicians Emergency Resources Foundation. You'll have to explain that to everybody afterwards. Better known as Murph. Past board member and president of the Construction Specifications Institute. Avid supporter of the WHAS Crusade for Children. Been active in that for 25 years. Hobbies include musician, live sound engineer, classic cars. Sponsors are Alice Bridges and Renee Smith Hamlin. Let's give them a round of applause. So then Tony Hammond is the vice president at Humana. He's retiring tomorrow. Welcome to the club. You can come over and help me prune my roses. He spent 19 years in Medicare, Medicaid, and long-term care. Hang around after, I've got a few questions. Many years with Humana's Puerto Rico market. Tony is also an actuary, and he's a 9-year veteran of the U.S. Navy as a nuclear engineer on subs. And stay tuned, keep subs forefront in your mind. Tony and wife Jean, who is here, Jean, wave, okay, are members of the Cathedral of Assumption. Tony serves on the Finance Committee, and they're looking forward to more time together at their farm in Fern Creek. Sponsors are Buddy Stewart and Leland Woodmansey. Let's give him a round of applause. I don't know what the chances are, but John Morse is an undergraduate in engineering from the U.S. Naval Academy, served 5 years in submarine service aboard the USS Lewis and Clark, after which he obtained an MBA from Wharton, various executive positions over a 24-year career in the healthcare industry. Retired in 2017 from the position of assistant to the executive VP for health affairs at U of L Health Sciences Center. I'm sorry. He got tired of folding out that flap on his business card to get everything in. Prior to joining the Health Sciences Center at U of L, he served 4 years as Secretary of the Cabinet for Health Services, Commonwealth of Kentucky. Sponsors are Jay Davison and Craig Sherman. All right, now I gotta find my way. to the right spot on me here. I'd like to just very briefly do a shout out to Larry Sloan, Jerry Martin, Tom Denal, and Beth Dunham for the work that they're doing representing the club in various anti-human trafficking activities. If any of those individuals are here, please stand. Take some time to talk to one or more of them. It's interesting stuff that we're getting ourselves involved with. Leyland Woodmansee will introduce today's speaker. Leyland is retired as the Executive Director of the Greater Louisville Medical Society, a past president of our club, a Paul Harris Fellow, and chair of the new member mentor/orientation committee. Leyland, yours.
Thanks, President Barry. And you know, interestingly enough, I have a first cousin who was a submariner and a nuclear reactor operator as well. So if you have a sinking feeling today, it's not because my name is speaker today. Okay, well, the physician-patient relationship as depicted by Dr. Marcus Welby is not one that many of us might recognize today. In 1969, after Robert Young began a 7-year stint as Marcus Welby, MD, on television, Dr. Welby, if you might recall, was the personification of the revered general practitioner. He knew his patients as individuals. He dispensed equal doses of wisdom and good medicine and took the time to help patients work out their personal crises, all in 1 hour. Our speaker today, Dr. Wayne Tuckson, is here to pronounce Marcus Welby is dead. Now physicians are scrambling to balance the demands of running a business, to respond to regulatory mandates, to interact with various types of payers, be wary of malpractice threats, meet expectations built on today's television doctors and hourly ads for new pharmaceuticals, and, oh yes, provide good patient care. So Dr. Tuckson will walk us through physicians' attempts over the years to adapt their practices to outside pressures. He will illustrate where we are now, what's working and what's not, and he will share some reasons for caution and hope for the future. Wayne B. Tuckson, MD, is a colorectal surgeon practicing in Louisville. He's a graduate of Howard University Medical School in Washington, D.C., where, after postgraduate training, he served as chief of the Division of Colon and Rectal Surgery. He joined the faculty of the University of Louisville Department of Surgery in 1994. Dr. Tuckson left the university in 2001 to launch Kentuckiana Colon and Rectal Surgery. In addition to his private practice, Dr. Tuckson is deeply committed to the health of our community. He reaches out to Kentucky and Louisville residents via Kentucky Health, the KET show he developed and hosts. Kentucky Health has received several national awards for excellence of content during its 15 years of broadcast and is a weekly resource for families across our Commonwealth. Dr. Tuckson also is a founder of the African American Health Initiative, a project to improve the health status of African Americans in Kentucky through community forums and engagement. As current president of the Greater Louisville Medical Society, he has led the creation of a patient continuity of care plan that connects patients with physicians who volunteer to step in when an abrupt practice closure leaves patients without a caregiver. As the Medical Society's first African American president, Dr. Tuckson has strived for recognition of the founders of Louisville's Red Cross Hospital, which served as a haven for African American physicians and patients at a time when segregation blocked physicians from practicing in all other local hospitals. In 2018, Dr. Tuckson received the Kentucky Medical Association's Community Service Award, the Humana Physician Excellence in Community Health Award, and the Louisville Central Community Center's Lyman T. Johnson Distinguished Leadership Award. Dr. Tuckson also has served on the boards of the Air Pollution Control District and Metro Louisville Health and Wellness, and he regularly volunteers for Surgery on Sunday, where surgical services are provided free of charge to people who aren't eligible for health insurance or can't afford the cost of their care. He's married to Brenda Tuckson, and they have 2 sons, Wayne Lee Tuckson and James H. Blaine III. So, please join me in giving a warm Rotary welcome to Dr. Wayne D. Tuckson.
Leland has given my talk, so I really don't have much to say, but I appreciate that a lot. I've had a lot of fun trying to do a TV show, Kentucky Health. For a long time, there's a standard one has to look at as far as healthcare television, and it's not Dr. Oz, it's not the doctors. For me, it was always, am I doing it as good as Gene West? Well, thanks to Laura Kruger, we're getting there, but I'm still not quite Gene West yet, so I'm intimidated when I see her. President Barker, thank you very much for allowing me to be here with you all. It's not that I have anything against Marcus Welby. I like Marcus Welby. But we have to accept the fact that Marcus Welby is dead. If we don't accept that, nothing else that I say from this point on will have any merit, bearing, or any redemptive value whatsoever. He is dead. We all will have to agree Marcus Welby is dead. And we're all complicit in that. Number one, we stopped watching the show. Maybe we do again. But number two, the era of Dr. Welby has passed us by, unfortunately. I'm not certain that that's necessarily a good thing. We're not quite to this guy, if you remember, for those of us of a certain age, and I'm in a room with people of my age group, and I'm very happy about that. So often I'll talk about this guy and everybody looks, who? But anyway, you know, this guy, the robot is not going around saying, danger, Will Robinson, you're having a coronary, danger, take Bill Tyson. You know, no, that's not what's going on. We're not quite to this point yet either. But clearly there is a change in the way healthcare is being delivered to us all right now. That model where we pick up the phone and we go into the friendly physician offices around the corner from us, that sadly has passed on. So what are we looking at right now? Well, there is a change in the ownership of practices. There was a time when Dr. Oberst would come out of medical school, finish his residency program, and bring out his shingle and say, I am now going to practice medicine. And that worked out really well. But unfortunately, the number of physicians that are owning their own practices has steadily decreased as we look at one entity, hospitals are buying practices. And there are many reasons why hospitals are buying these practices. We'll get to that in a little bit. But the numbers have finally converged to the point where there are more physician-owned practices by hospitals than there are individual physicians owning their own practices. And when you kind of look at the data, it's really kind of interesting. Because right now, depending on who you look at, up to 63% of all docs are employed, meaning they're not solo practice owning their own shops anymore. More importantly, the folks who are coming out of medical school will never know that era of where we would come out of our residency programs and open shop and start practicing. Because 90% of them will probably be employed when they finish. Now who is it? Folks who are over 40, really now this number should be over 50, are probably not going to be employed. Whereas the younger people that are coming out under the 40 age group, when you look at it right now, they are employed by somebody. So the physicians who are training now are not coming out and going to open up that little shingle in some small town. Rather, they're going to be employed by somebody else. Well, as the primary care physicians become employed, specialists such as myself and Dr. Yerrick, who's a guest here, we have to follow along with where the specialists go. It's almost like the prey fish and the sharks. Where the prey go, so must the predator go along with them. And so as more and more physicians are becoming employed, specialists have to go along and also being employed too. And that presents some great opportunities and also presents some downfalls for us, which we'll take a look at. But again, the lines are parallel to one another. If one group goes up, the other group goes up right along with it. So the real question is, why is it that docs are leaving solo practice? And there are a couple of things. One of them is the expense of running businesses. Now, boy, I was really interested to hear about some of the people in this room who are titans of business around here. I did not take a business course in medical school. I did not take a business course in residency. Dr. Zering, who's the immediate past president of the Greater Louisville Medical Society, took some time, and he did take business courses. So he knows a little bit about business. But most of us as physicians, most, not all, don't know business world. And we don't do a very good job of it. And you can see that if you ever look at some of the contracts that we sign. Anybody in their right mind in the business world will say, are you out of your mind to sign this thing? But that's a falling on us. So number one, we don't have that expertise. That's not always in our bag of things that we can do to help ourselves. Two, there's just the cost of running these practices nowadays. Where we're located, so you got the mortgages, et cetera. Then there's the practice expenses, the personnel that we have to have on board, the assistant, scheduler, the receptionist that's going to be there. Maybe we need somebody in the office now that we have electronic records. We're supposed to speed things up. So instead of the doctor standing there talking, we have somebody who's going to, a scribe, who's going to keep track of what it is. We have to pay for these sorts of things. These are costs that some of us can't necessarily bear. And so we need help. Somebody to help guide us or pick up some of those costs for us. Then there's the relationship with health insurers. By the way, let me just start off by saying how much I love you, man. Amen. Is anybody from United Healthcare? Same thing. Anthem, Aetna, I got no problem with anybody. But let's look at it. When we talk about negotiating with our health insurers, if you have and we'll see this in a minute, you have a large group that's trying to negotiate with an insurer over the price, and you have a solo practitioner negotiating over the price. If you have a group of physicians who said, we control a particular market, and you want to pay us X dollar, but we want 2 times X. And I'm by myself and I say, I want 2 times X. Is the insurer going to listen to me, or are they going to listen to this large group who has a large market share? Clearly, the solo individual is at a great disadvantage. In fact, they lose out almost every time when we get into that kind of negotiations. So there's this problem with our relationship with our health insurers, who are the ones who are paying us in many of these cases. That dynamic has changed such that the individual physician now is at a disadvantage when negotiating how they're going to be paid for services. Malpractice costs. You'll hear it a lot. Malpractice costs do not necessarily drive up the price of medicine. I'm here to tell you, malpractice fears do drive up the cost of medicine. If any other physician in this room has ever been sued before, and I have, it is the most humbling, one of the most awful experiences I've ever gone through my life. I used to have to go home every night and look in the mirror to find out exactly how many horns did I actually have. I was always comforted to find out I only had 2, not the 5 that they said tonight. If you don't think that after having been sued because I didn't repeat a test, that I don't now repeat every test, believe me, I do. So if you want to know, there's these bad doctors out here who are repeating tests, that's why malpractice costs are up. Here it is, I'm the one. Because having been sued for not doing something, I'll never let that happen to me again. I repeat everything. That means I don't trust anybody else's work. If I get an outside pathology report, I'm having Dr. Zering do a second opinion on it. Yeah, that increases cost, but I've got to cover myself to prevent that from ever happening again. Also, the thing about malpractice costs, let's face it, we're facing a crisis here in Kentucky in terms of physicians available to take care of patients because of malpractice costs. It's too expensive for us to be here. And the risk of being sued is so great compared to some of our surrounding states. So this is an issue we're going to have to address on several different points. Then there's a question of call coverage. If you're in solo practice, you're always on call. You can always be reached. That's good and bad. But people need time off. Who's going to cover for them? What are the exchanges one has to go through to arrange that? So if you're in a big group, it gets passed around. Small group, you're all by yourself. And then there's collegial discourse. One of the problems in healthcare is we have lost that lounge where we used to all go and sit in the hospital. Everybody used to come to the hospital, you see different doctors, there'll be discussion about patients, and it would matter. Well, individuals in solo practice right now, particularly in some of our rural areas, they're by themselves. There is no discourse where that discussion is going to take place. So that's kind of a problem for some of the solo practitioners versus some of those in different kinds of groups. So what are the models that we're really looking at right now? Well, one of them is a single specialty group. think something like First Urology here in this area. Every urologist in Jefferson County, surrounding areas, is a member of First Urology. So what does that mean? Well, number one, they have good call coverage. Someone may be on call once every 6 to 8 weeks. They have to cover a lot of hospitals, yes, but they only have to do it once every 6 to 8 weeks. Number two, there's sharing of information amongst the group. Hey, I got a problem. Let me call one of my colleagues and ask them their opinion. Three, there's a bit of expertise that is developed. One person may be doing more prostate surgery. Another person may be doing more incontinence work. So that kind of gets shared back and forth. So there's a benefit to the patient that the individual who's treating them may have some greater expertise. On the downside, though, if one physician in that group has a bad experience with a patient, I'm not saying this about First Urology in particular, but oftentimes in these groups, if you've had a bad experience with one member, other members don't want to take care of the patient. And so that's a definite downside. An advantage for them also, when negotiating with the insurers, they can go in and say, well, fine, if you don't want to meet our price, we don't necessarily have to take your insurance. So where's a patient to go if they need urological services if they're the only game in town for 60 miles? That presents itself as a problem also, or an advantage for those individuals. Then there's the multi-specialty group, where we have individuals who cover the gamut, be they primary care, cardiologists, surgeons, the whole thing is there. So it's almost like a one-stop shopping. Individual has a problem, they go in, they see the physician there, they need a referral, it goes out within that multi-specialty group. That has some very, very good advantages. May not necessarily keep down costs of things, particularly if that same multi-specialty group is trying to subsidize their profits through diagnostic studies. Sometimes that happens, sometimes inappropriately. We have to be honest about it. But in these multi-specialty groups, it can work out well. You see things like this at the Trover Clinic, for instance, out in Madison. Very good organization. Individuals getting taken care of, a set group of doctors providing very, very good care. Then there's the university and academic centers. We are fortunate in Kentucky to have two very good institutions at the University of Kentucky, and we have a better one up here in Louisville called the University of Louisville. Does that give me any brownie points for anybody? One tries. But the difference of the university programs, you have essentially a multi-specialty group with the added advantage of people who are super specialized in particular areas. So if there's a problem that develops within that milieu, they can refer it within the organization to have somebody there take care of the problem. Plus you have the research factors going on. So again, that's that stimulation of ideas, plus the teaching of residents and students. Again, further stimulation. The downside, though, of being in a university program is that attending physician going to be on call when I have my problem? Is it the one that I saw last month, or is it going to be the person whose time it is in the box this month is going to be there? What happens, the one good thing about having students and residents, that's a lot of people taking a look at you. Chances are something's not going to get missed. The downside of it is, that's a lot of people coming in and taking a look at you. I don't know about you, but one anal exam is my limit. I think Mark Twain said it best when he was seen coming out of a house of ill repute. And they said, Mr. Twain, what are you doing? He said, well, this is an experiment, and if you see me again, it's a perversion. So, and I feel the same way. Next we got talking about as far as accountable care organizations. So this is really going to be the biggest thing for us. With the accountable care organizations, this is something that really came about with the Affordable Care Act. We're kind of looking at how we're going to measure quality and how we're going to mandate quality within individuals. It's a combination where we're going to take the profit and say we're going to spread it out amongst multiple individuals, between the physicians, between the hospitals, and any other involved in this entity. Now there's a variation also when insurance companies have gotten involved, and I'm not going to talk about that one just yet. So when you have accountable care, the idea was, we know we're going to get paid X amount of dollars to provide a service. But if I can take care of that patient and do it for a cheaper amount, we make a profit. Now, please don't get me wrong. I am, you'll see a little bit, I'm all for universal health care. But I'm also for about making a profit too. Ben Franklin said it, do good by doing good. So, we can save money and then we can distribute the profits amongst the individuals. But we have to demonstrate we're doing it for quality, not just by cutting services, because that was the way it was done before ACA came on board. The way people were looking at it and say, okay, we'll cut back on some services that we're providing to individuals. With the accountable care organizations, with ACOs, what's happening instead, we're looking at, we have certain criteria. Say, for instance, readmission rates. The person gets discharged from the hospital following surgery, yet they have to come back a week later because of a wound infection. That's bad quality. We're not doing that patient any good. It doesn't do us any good to get that patient out of the hospital sooner. So how do we look at as far as quality indexes and those metrics? And that's what we're looking at as far as the accountable care organization is concerned. And I think that's going to be one of the best models for us to take a look at. What are some examples of these? Well, I think two of the best. Many of you, if you've never been there, I used to train and work at one of them, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic. Essentially, these are ACOs. Because you have a group of individuals under one umbrella, sole purpose is driving to prove better quality of care, and they're also trying to do it cheaper at the same time. And if it works, everybody in the organization gets benefit. And I think, even if you've never been there, I think you'd have to say Cleveland Clinic, Mayo Clinic, they've done a fairly good job over the years. There's some others, guys that are up in Pennsylvania, done a very good job about that. Hospital practices are a variation on the ACO. Now we have three here in this area. We have Kentucky One, which is divesting itself of us. We have Norton, and then of course we have Baptist. Now when you look at it, essentially these are ACOs, but in a very kind of different structure. Most ACOs are acquiring people because of skill set. What has occurred, unfortunately for us, with our hospital ACO model, they just kind of threw out a big net, dragged in as many physicians as they possibly could, then tried to figure out what we're going to do with it, and then tried to look as far as quality is concerned. One of the other problems with this, which you find in our hospital employed model that you don't find in some of the other ACOs, is restriction of patient mobility. So if your patient, if your physician rather is at the Norton system, 99 times out of 100, your physician is going to refer you to somebody within the Norton system. Now, it may be that that individual is the best person that you're going to refer them to. Make no mistake. I got no problem with that. But too often the drive is because of a punishment to the physician of saying that if you send this patient outside of network, we're going to cut your salary because you're cutting in on our profits. And I think most of us will have a very bad taste in our mouths when you think that that might be the reason why your doctor is sending you to see a certain specialist. Not because they're the best, but because we have to do that because that person's in network. And that's one of the bad things on the side of that as far as our hospital-owned practices. Finally, there's this thing called concierge medicine. This is probably the closest thing we're going to see to the resurgence of a Marcus Welby model. You pay somebody to be available to you. You are paying them above and beyond, be it $5,000, $10,000, some other. Probably some of you probably have concierge care. And it's a great thing. Middle of the night, you got a sore throat. What do? You pick up the phone. You call this doctor, and they will answer your phone call. You're not going to talk to the answering service. You're not going to talk to a resident. You're not going to talk to the on-call doctor. You're going to talk to the person you're paying that money to. And that's reasonable. That's a good thing. There's a sense of a good, warm feeling about it. Because what is the thing, what is the thing about that solo practitioner? Doesn't have to go back and refer to all these different records to find out who you are. They know who you are. So when you call this concierge doctor, they already know. Plus, they're going to pick up the phone and call somebody else to see if they can't get you in, if it's a specialist you need to see, to get you in to see that person or get your test done rapidly. So concierge medicine is one of those things. But unfortunately, by name alone, it is not for everybody, and everybody will not be able to use service. Finally, and this is the thing that may not be a bad problem, but it scares the devil out of me, and this is the Walmart concept. Not because I get anything against Walmart, if anybody here is from Walmart. We heard an interesting talk not too long ago, where about 25% of Americans go to Walmart at least once a week. 75% of Americans go to Walmart at least once a month. Now, I don't know about those of you who are in the business world, I'm sure you would be salivating to have this kind of, oh, by the way, they don't go just to visit, they go to buy. No window shopping. So Walmart is looking at this, let's say, and they're not the only ones, other companies are looking at the same thing. So what happens if we say, you come in and your 3 children need vaccinations, all right? And you come in to get the vaccination, you need to get your blood pressure, et cetera, checked. We can have you do all that here, and we can do it for about $80 to $100. That's a good deal, isn't it? And you say, I can come buy my underwear and oranges at the same time and get my blood pressure checked. I started to say diaper product, I didn't go there. So you mean that I can get all that sort of stuff at one time, and I'm going to get a reduced price as far as my physician visit? That's great. It's wonderful. Walmart went, because, oh, by the way, they are negotiating with our pharmaceutical colleagues, and they're getting a decrease on the price for the drugs. So which they're going to pass some of that on to you, so that you come in here and buy more oranges and underwear and other things. It all feeds onto itself. But just think now, you're a young medical student, graduating from medical school owing $250,000, $300,000. And someone says, I'm going to have you come in to work for me, and we're going to pay you retail wages. Are you going to do that? Are you going to want to go to medical school? Do you think you can afford to pay things back if that occurs? But this is one of the things that we have to be careful about. As we start looking about, we're going to the lowest common denominator for providing our health care now. And I'm not talking about ancillary services. I've got nothing against nurse practitioners or physician assistants either. But we're starting to accept that we'll go to the lowest trained individual to do the thing that we want, and we're going to pay them the least amount that we possibly can. So what are we going to be getting if we continue to do that? I enjoyed hearing about the fact that we have 2 people who were submariners. All I can think about is back on the movie The Right Stuff, when the Mercury astronaut said, just think, we're about to go up in a rocket that was paid for by the lowest bidder. I don't think any of the submariners were going to go into a submarine that was done in a slipshod fashion. I'm sure that they knew the quality of everything they were going to get. So there are a couple of questions as I come to the end. Number one, who's the employer for doctors right now? Who employs us? And if any of you as patients think you're the one, forget it, you're wrong. That's the one wrong answer, unfortunately. You would think that you would be at the center of this. And this is where the Walmart model actually makes a lot of good sense. Because in that model, you are the driving force as far as how the healthcare is going to go. But actually, our employers are going to be the insurance companies, because they're the ones telling us how we're going to get paid, how much we're going to get paid, and what we're going to do, and when we're going to do it. 2, if I work for a hospital, and I do, they're my employer. That's the person I have to keep happy. Because if they say, Wayne, you're kind of costing us a lot of money. Or Wayne, you're doing some difficult procedures. We have to start thinking about your model here. And oh, by the way, when I talk about the ACOs, and their whole thing is how can we keep down costs, get patients well and back out of the hospital or off of fewer medications, et cetera, et cetera. I want you to remember one thing. The sicker the patient, the more expensive the patient, the more risk associated with that patient. Do you want to take on that sick patient in your practice? And I'm not casting any value judgment on this, but imagine you have a 600-pound male who's 50 years old, who's got a bad heart, bad lungs, who shows up in your office and who needs surgery. Do you want to operate on that guy? Or would you rather operate on Ms. Hammond? 30-looking young lady, just as svelte as she wants to be, and have it. Who do you want to operate on? Which one is going to provide you can do the service, and they're going to get better, and you're going to look good at the same time. So if you're running an organization where you're dependent upon turning over a profit, you don't want to do that person, the bad patient. And yet these people still need to be provided health care. So somebody has to take care of them and has to worry about being paid without being penalized for that. So that's why I say when we look at as far as insurance, our current model, the way our insurance thing is going, it's not sustainable. It is just not sustainable. It's no more sustainable than this current model of employed physicians that we're seeing right now is going to be sustainable. It has got to change. Now you can argue different models out there, and that's what I said earlier on. Yeah, I'm a proponent for universal health care, where we take that whole thing argument out of the discussion when we're taking care of our patients. There's a reason why we're number 11 in terms of the industrialized countries as far as healthcare is concerned. There's a reason why we're number 37 across the world as far as our healthcare. Because it's a simple thing of access and how we're going to pay for the services that are rendered. And oh, by the way, you realize that we go from number 37 to number 1 when you start looking at people age 65 and above. And you know why that is? There's one reason. Medicaid. Suddenly, people have insurance and they're now seeing physicians. So, insurance is going to be a big thing for us. I put this question here, would I recommend medicine to somebody now? I'm going to tell you truthfully, and I think the physicians in here may agree with me. There is nothing I do on a daily basis that is more fun than the interactions I have with patients. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. Patients literally and figuratively are naked before me. They trust me, in my case as a surgeon, to assault them and then put them back together again. This is a privilege. This is a joy. I'm always fascinated by the way the human body works. I mean, it's an amazing thing. It's wonderful. I love it. I would recommend it to anybody else coming down the road with a couple of caveats. Number one, as Kevin Hart says, stay in your lane financially. Because when we looked at employed physician models, it's great because they say, okay, you come on board, you get $300,000 coming out for 3 years. Well, at the end of those 3 years, that salary oftentimes gets cut, $250,000, then it gets cut again. Hospitals lose money to the tune of $150,000 to $200,000 per doctor on the employed physician model. This is why this is not sustainable. Something else is going to have to come about. But still, I think if someone likes doing this kind of stuff, and I do, I would recommend it 100%. It's still a great job, and it's still something that is important, that there's a need, and somehow or another, most people like it. And people don't like me because I put my finger up the rear end. I get terrible reactions. But everybody else in the world, they do something like that. I did have a patient of mine who asked me, she said, Dr. Tuckson, I realize that you're not very smart. And I thought this was an interesting comment from someone else about to operate on. She said, I realize you're not very smart. Because if you were smart, you'd gone in and you would have been a cardiothoracic surgeon. But I like you anyway. That was funny. But I would recommend it. But this is what we are. We are somewhat becoming minions. And this is one minion that's not going to allow himself to be told how we want to do things. I think it's very important for we as physicians to re-grasp the reins of control. And whenever that discussion comes up about quality and cost, which is what things come about all the time, quality and cost, we have to remind everybody, it's always quality. Always quality. Cost is secondary. It has to be about the quality of care that we provide. And that's where we go. For those of you who, I think some of you have participated in a program that we have called Wear the White Coat. For those of you that have not had an opportunity to participate in the Wear the White Coat program that the Greater Louisville Medical Society have, I want to encourage you to do so. It is usually in the fall, about October, November. You have a chance to spend a day with a physician. We try to gross you out. We have not succeeded. But it's an opportunity to see exactly what goes on in practice in medicine. I think it's kind of interesting to see it from the other side. And it's also important for us to see things from your eyes as you do. So if you do, any of you have any interest, I do encourage you to contact us at the Medical Society, and we'd be more than happy to try to hook you up. Again, we do that in the October once a year. With that, I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I think things look very good. I see a lot of good opportunities for us as far as healthcare down the road. But Marcus Welby is dead, and let's accept the fact that there's going to be a new paradigm for us as far as care. Thank you all very much for this opportunity to be here. Any questions? Please, yes, sir.
Comment on Medicare for all and other people's employees.
The question raised was a comment about Medicare for all, and that's being discussed right now. Pros and cons. We all agree the importance of investment in infrastructure. I think God knows MSD is trying to do something out here right now. And we know what happens when we don't do it, and MSD is trying to tell us we need to get ahead of the curve. Investment in infrastructure is an important thing. We know the importance of building a strong foundation. It costs up front, but you reap the rewards on the back end. We know that when we had expanded Medicaid, there was a cost up front, but suddenly what do we find out? Emergency room visits started decreasing, patients started showing up and getting screening examinations for cancers, breast and colorectal cancer, and I use colorectal cancer as an example. We saw that once patients started coming in, the incidences of colon cancer started dropping. We went from number 49 as far as screening in the world, in the United States for colon cancer, up to number 26. Our mortality rate plummeted. We had the largest drop of any place in the United States as far as colon, all because people had access now, partly because some of the work Mr. Morse did when he was with the Health Insurance Commission, when we started having people allowed to getting screenings done, but also some of the other cost things that were taken off the table. So it shows that with an investment up front, you are saving some cost on the back end. Now, it takes about 3 to 5 years before you see those savings, but you do see those savings. So to answer your question directly, when someone says, well, it costs too much for us to invest in providing Medicare for everybody, I'm telling you it costs too much for us not to do so. Because what we've effectively done is said, okay, we're going to have two classes of people, one that gets health care and the other one that doesn't. And oh, by the way, that group, when we're not providing preventative care or managing their chronic illnesses, they will show up in the emergency room. And when they show up in the emergency room, the poor guy that runs the hospital has to take that patient in, has to spend the money to take care of that patient, and doesn't get any reimbursement for it. So yes, there is a cost up front, and we can talk about how to pay for that sort of thing. I'd be more than happy to. But in the long run, it benefits us all. It really does. And the fact that we are the only industrialized country not to have some kind of a program, I think is appalling. And I think it speaks of how we view ourselves as a bunch of, we tend to lose our community good. Because we seem to feel that if I provide something for you, that's costing me, and that can't be good for me. And I'll argue the other way around. If I provide something for you, I'm going to get a benefit from that down the road. So I think when we start looking at this Medicare for all, I think we have to start looking at it through a different lens of why don't we do something like that? Are we that smart that everybody else is that wrong? And there are different models for that. You go to the Singapore model, where they'll cover catastrophic illnesses and anything else beyond a certain point, and that's a good model to look at. Or you can look at it from the Canadian and or the British model. But anyway, that's my thought on that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is John Clark, and I'm not sure if you've answered this question, but I'm going to say it again. First, I'd like to say that this was a marvelous presentation. It's really brought into perspective what the healthcare industry is about and what the future might be for it and what we need to look for. I think you've done a terrific job, and thank you for that. The thing that I got out of this is that this Affordable Care Act, you're a proponent of, or were a proponent of, and universal health care is something that you believe in. And the argument, and you may have just addressed this, but I think it bears repeating. What is in the Affordable Care Act, we have tried to destroy that here as a country and through our politics. And I guess my question is what is the mechanism that would pay for that that we're missing? Because this country's missing this, and they don't. There's not a discussion about that, other than yes, everybody's got to have health care, and even the sick guys and all the well guys are going to have to pay for this. But they tell me that that's not going to work. Can you, as a physician, from your perspective, tell me how it would work?
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. There are legitimate arguments against both Medicare for everybody and expanded Medicaid, or even universal care. And I accept that these are legitimate, heartfelt disagreements. When we talk about how we're going to pay for this sort of thing, to talk purely about savings in healthcare dollars doesn't always get the point. We're saying, well, yeah, you're going to save dollars. We're not going to spend as much on healthcare down the road. We're not going to spend as much on treating end-stages diseases as we would. Therefore, we're going to have some savings there. So that's a nebulous concept, and I agree with that 100%. But let's look at it from the other point of view. Let's take Portland Family Health Center. Affordable Care Act comes on board. Suddenly, patients have insurance, and they start showing up at the doors of Portland Family Health Center. Because they now have an increased number of patients that they're seeing, they had to hire more healthcare workers, physicians, nurse practitioners, nurses' aides. They also hired more secretaries. Because they now had more people, they were able to get more jobs going about. Now, that's here, where you may not see that increase in employment or appreciate it as much. Let's go to some of our rural counties in eastern Kentucky. Let's take some in Hal Rogers' district, since he was the person who didn't like it. Small rural hospitals were dying because they weren't getting compensated for the care that they were providing. So suddenly you have patients coming in who are paying for their services. They come in, physicians bill, hospital bills, everybody gets collected. They start hiring more people, physicians, nurses, dietary people, housekeeping, who then start spending money in the community. There is the economic advantage. We always talk about this trickle-down concept where taxes and money go. Well, you start increasing jobs, communities start coming back. That's going to pay for your health care at that point. So I think that's how you see it, when you look at it in terms of job creation and bringing more money into the community. Yes, sir.
My name is Larry Sloan, and I thank you for coming today. And if I'm saying something incorrect, please correct me, I'm sure you will. The big problem seems to be, with the Affordable Care Act, they use insurance companies, correct? So what is talked about now is, what are you going to do with the insurance industry if you eliminate them and make it universal health care? And even Howard Schultz mentioned that. So how do you make that? Until that question is answered to the satisfaction of a majority of people, I don't think it's going to happen. Just your comments on this.
Hey, and thank you very much, Mr. Sloan, I appreciate that. During the discussion we had when the representative from Walmart was here, I asked him that question about what's going to happen to physicians with your model of which you speak of. And he said, well, there are going to be some winners and there are going to be some losers. My brother, a very smart individual, far smarter than I, he didn't go into colorectal surgery, so he's technically a lot smarter than me. He used to be senior vice president of United Healthcare, and he was the chief medical officer. We would have some very interesting discussions over this topic. I learned how great the health insurance company was to providing health care in America. They do a good job. I say that somewhat facetiously, but health insurance do a good job for many things. Remember the commercial about the couple they were arguing about when they're trying to push through Hillary and they were trying to push their thing through. The question was, do we want, Harry and Mom, I forgot it, wait. Do we want the government telling us how we're going to run our business? I'm going to tell you right now, I'd much rather deal with CMS in terms of how I'm going to have to negotiate providing health care for my patients than any insurance company that you can name. You talk about micromanaging, my God. Trying to get approval, right now there's a bill before our Kentucky legislature to try to get things for pre-approval, pre-authorization for things for us, to get that off the table so we can just go ahead and provide care for our patients in a timely fashion. So I don't necessarily feel bad for the insurance companies. If you look at some of the models, though, that are out there in the other industrialized companies, insurance companies are included in those, in providing charging insurance care. I think when the Affordable Care Act went out, they had to have the insurance companies backing. Just like the AMA reluctantly came on board, it had to be there to support it. I do think there's going to be a role for them, but not in terms of primary provider. People always argue, why do we have to pay a tax for having health care? Well, I'm at that age right now, and I've had a discussion with some people in the room. I'm going to retire, and I'm going to take Social Security, because I've been paying into Social Security since I was 18 years, actually since I was 16 years old. We all pay into something that we don't necessarily use until somewhere down the road. I think most of you have a car, and I think most of you drive, and if you do, you all pay auto insurance, whether you need it or not. You're not gonna get auto insurance after you have the accident. We pay into a system. And I think we have to get over this idea that we're not gonna pay into something. So I think that, is there gonna be a role for the insurance company? I don't know. I do see them having some influence, but do we necessarily have to have them? I don't know. I don't think so. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, 2 more questions. Talk to me.
My name is Rick Hynek, and I'd like to take things in a little bit of a different direction.
Please.
But like Larry, I may be totally off base in my question, but I'm under the impression that particularly our smaller market and more